His grace and His blessing, now and ever to the ages of all ages. Amen. This will be relatively short. It's a topic that usually we discuss towards the end of the year anyways, but I call it wealth, poverty, and the Christian life, because how we serve rich and poor, and is there a distinction? Also, in my mind, we don't hear many talks. We might hear the importance of giving to the poor, might hear the importance of serving in general, but how do we serve with socioeconomic differences and gaps? The same culture, the same area. So I just want to divide them. First, evangelism to the poor, to the wealthy, and then some of the economics of pastoral care. And that one, I think, will be very brief. I'll explain. Evangelism to the poor, when Christ said, right, whenever you serve them, right, I'm with them. You served me when I was hungry and you fed me, and all of this. This is the premise that we use, but even in practice, we forget about it all the time. We were talking about yesterday about some stories about how we lose sight of this very often. But when we come to serve the poor, we'll find Christ hidden in them. We'll do the same structure, some of the barriers, judging, or to serve. Sometimes we'll serve the poor, and they know your motives. Like if you're just serving to clear your conscience or because of a group, they will let you know that they need or that they don't need. Like God reveals, we find ourselves in the service. We also learn how to respect them, and they don't trust everyone that serves them. So they know, they as if God reveals to them this. They've dealt with a lot of people serving them. That's why when we have some of the projects, we were just talking about Hawaii, for example. We started out doing many different service when we were doing evangelism there, and there are many organizations that serve the poor. Thankfully, in this country, it's a value to seek and to help those who are in need. And we found that organizations are very different. Even Christian organizations, public organizations, the way that they respect and care for the poor is different. I'll give you an example. We're serving in one place, which is the state mission, and that's where they have beds, they have food, and they have some service projects that they get them involved in to get them out of the mission. And then they had a small Christian mission, but when we were serving, same group, one day here, we felt a complete difference to the point where some of the servants were saying, we don't like how they're being treated. Like the same people, the same poor, they're treated in one place completely different than in the other. God bless. And that in the sitting, there's, I'll go through the whole story of how this, but it was actually an outreach service from one family on the island that decided to just have sandwiches, give sandwiches. Of course, now we say that's not enough. Go on Thanksgiving or wherever, we're going to hand out sandwiches and go home. We didn't do anything to them. They forgot us. We did a good work. Maybe God remembered, but we didn't help their poverty. Like maybe we helped their hunger for half a day. So anyways, they started to do this weekly, this couple, and then they decided to purchase a building. It's not much bigger than this room. It was a big investment because he was a pastor, so it's always difficult to have it in the same building, so they bought a special building, and they had meals for them a couple times a day, or I think it was once a day. Very simple. And then it grew. They purchased the building next door. To the point when we visited, it's not like, it's maybe, this side of the building, but 3 stories. It's not that big. And when we're going, they're very, like Sayyidina was telling about Serapian, they're very proud of their building. It's a very small investment. But what they do here, so they don't just feed them 3 times a day. They have a program where especially on the weekends, they have time for like Bible preaching, outreach. And every once in a while, they'll notice one or two that their lives change. Like they become Christian. We met one of the guys once. He was, hitman. So he was in a gang, but his job was to kill people. He said, and you see him like tattoos and everything. He said, that was my job. I would go, kill, and that's it. So when he was starting to, they were preaching to him, and he started crying. So his girlfriend, he said, when he went home, the guy was asking, I need the name of that pastor. So she said, no, I'm not going to give it to you. He said, why? He said, because you're going to kill him because he made you cry. Because he didn't want to cry. But after a while, he kept going back. His life was changed. And what they do in this program, that when their lives changed, they have them serve part-time with the rest of the community. Especially they keep the order, because sometimes, some people are not sober, some people are not sane. So they know how to deal with them, like better than us. We like step back and they know what to say and what to do. So anyways, they start serving out in like this for a while. Then they find a place for them to live while they're serving. They're serving part-time. They go through another program, make sure that they're clean from drugs and alcohol and all of that. And then they start looking for them for work. They could employ them full-time in that little building to serve the meals and help coordinate. And then after a while, when things go well, it's like full service. And they only do that for a few people, but over the long term, they change the lives of many of the people in the little island. That's why whenever we go there, we'd go there once a year. But of all the services, no, we want to keep going back. It's in Hawaii, in Oahu. One day we'll go. But I want to say that the vision, it's a very small, and it started from a small church, one family, but it was at a commitment, a long-term commitment to serve a small group. Like you say, okay, we're going to change poverty in all of Florida. I mean, they could, but if you in these type of steps and the way that they respect, like they make sure everything when you go to the kitchen to prepare the meals. I'm sure, even though I'm not, the kitchen here is wonderful, I'm not saying it, but like we see everything is, completely organized and but very, like if you go to any one of the restaurants here, it's probably more organized because one of the leaders, he was in restaurant management. And he said, make sure that just because it's free, we're not going to, we have to give them quality. If the expiration, that's it. We throw it away. We don't give it to them because it's expired. So this type of mentality and service, it's respect and love for them. They feel it. So how we remove these, or the barrier of understanding poverty. So even sometimes preaching, we'd say, stop drinking, get a job, take a bath, and your life will be good. Sometimes, let's go. How to build bridges in this, many times just listening. So in the same group, they let us every once in a while we're serving, we can talk to them. But we don't go and give them Bible study right now. But the service that we're committed to, we just clean the tables, prepare the food. Sometimes they don't even see us. But I was amazed. Sometimes we're going to the table to see if they need anything. The conversation that they had. So one time they're like, Father, come here. We have a question for you. You're from Egypt, right? I said, yes. And the political problem. And what are the Muslims doing? And the brother, I said, how do you know? So yeah, of course we follow. Like the political discussion we had, if some of the youth were like, what are they talking about? How do they know this? One of the other ladies came, I'm trying to think what the conversation was. In the spiritual, so we were going to do a Bible study for some of the homeless ones. They do it every day. So we prepared something simple. We said, okay, we talked to them about Psalm 23, something very basic. So before we started, I said, okay, what were you studying in the Bible? You meet every day. They said, yesterday we were talking about Daniel 9 and the post-tribulation rapture, pre-tribulation rapture compared with Daniel and Revelation. So the people around there said, what? Like our group? What did he say? Like you were doing that? I'm like, yeah, very, very simple. So I said, we're going to give something. So he said, okay, we'll give them something on Daniel since they were doing Daniel. And one of them, he said, you forgot to mention this, and historical of Nebuchadnezzar, and this in the like the level, our expectation, like I said, we had to reevaluate what we expect from them. And then one of them said, okay, we like your group, let's sing for you. This song is based on Revelation chapter 6, where it's mentioned, and he cites the verse. Like, for us, we felt we need to go to learn, not to serve. And this is the understanding of how to serve. Like, we really, truly, when you say this, we benefit from them much more sometimes than when we go to serve them. So how we provide hope and care, and it unites, it brings the church and the people of God together. When you speak even in evangelism to the poor, to take an example, so in Egypt, as far as I know some of the bigger churches in Cairo and Alexandria, what they used to do is that they would send and preach in a certain community that didn't have a church, because like 20, 30 years ago, not all the villages had churches. Even still today, there's some regions they don't have parishes. So they would bring them in for a day, and give them communion and Sunday school, and then bus them back. And one of the priests said, no, this is not good enough. No, we need to do more. We have to bring the church to them, not them to the church, right? It's not a destination church. And so the second wave began to bring servants and priests and supplies from the outside. I remember once Abu Shoy came, he said the same. He wasn't enough. He was planning to move to live with them, not to. But Sonny said, no, that's too much. He was already committed for Alexandria. So, but the idea is to serve them with them, not just part-time. So how do we, then the third stage is to develop the community from within. I know it's talking about very big ideas, but the vision of what Christ did, that's what he did, right? He came to us, we were in poverty, we were in sin, we were in darkness, but he came to us to lift us out of what we were in and lived with. That's why he said, the word when you say he dwelt among us, and St. Athanasius, when he comments on it, what does he say? He said, just like a king, a very wealthy king, who comes to live in a poor village, and he lives in one house among the village. What happens to the village? Like imagine if, who's a wealthy man in the owner of Walmart? Huh? No, yes, huh? Bill Gates, who lives and comes in your neighborhood, a couple houses nearby you. What's going to happen to the value of your house? Right? And then everyone's going to come and say, well, he's living here? Yes, he's living in this house. So that's what St. Athanasius said. When Christ came to live in the flesh, in our earth, he changed the value of what it means to be human, and even our world, he changed the world. And that's the concept when we come to serve the poor. To last group that we took, they got permission in one of the mission areas. They said, there's an area here, they don't go to any of the shelters, do you mind going? I didn't go with them, Abuna was telling me the story. So it's like in an area with no roads or anything, like you have to walk, and it's hidden from the rest of that's why I didn't even know it exists. And they find them living as if, they're in the, Middle Ages or something. Very, very basic. And the people, they brought them food and started to talk to them. So after the end of the service, Abuna was asking the youth, what did you think? And a couple of them said, Abuna, we want to come back and live with them here. Like, the imprint said, we want to stay with them because they have nothing. And he said, no, it's dangerous. The other person said, no, it's dangerous. At night, people die here. Like, people don't survive because, if there's no protection, sometimes they try to steal from each other. It's very dangerous. Especially if they're on alcohol or something. So in the shelters, they don't allow. If someone has, substance abuse, they don't allow them to enter into the facility, most of them. So this is just the mentality, what it means, the challenge to serve the poor. St. John Chrysostom says, he lies at your entrance, the pearl in the mud, and you do not see him. The physician is at your gate. You do not accept the treatment. The pilot is in the harbor. You don't endure shipwreck. Do you feed parasites? Is you feeding yourself, and you don't feed the poor. So what is the challenge to serve the poor? One time Abu Tadris was telling us before, like the service that we have, is it in the curriculum? Like not just saying, okay, the Sunday school lesson, Lazarus and the poor man. Now we have to give to the poor. Okay, that's in the lesson. I'm talking about in the curriculum that we have in our Sunday school. How many times we have like service project? Okay, once a year, twice a year. I remember when we were young in one of the churches, it was necessary every week. Like we had to do a certain, and it was the same service. Like our Sunday school class or whatever, our youth meeting is committed to a weekly service, just like you're doing here every year. But just to say that we don't want our children to graduate from Sunday school and not have a regular commitment in their community. Like to know that part of their life, part of their mission is to serve these people. Sometimes we find the youth like depressed with many problems, family problems, health problems, problems with associating, problems at school, problems with family, all this. Sometimes just take them once, the vision of life changes. And this is, I think, our responsibility how to do this. There's many local groups serving the poor. I'll give you something about unity. The first wave of ecumenism, the National Council of Churches, the movement after World War II, where all the churches said, okay, we're divided, we need to get back together. So they started to talk about theology, just like we were talking this weekend. And then in America, at least, the system broke down. And a lot of the people were not happy. There was few people who were in charge, they're happy. The rest of the people said, we're not doing anything, we're just talking, and nothing's happening. And in some cases, we get farther apart. Like before, at least, we don't have dealings with Jews and Samaritans. Now we don't want to see them, we don't want to talk to them. And some of the divisions got bigger. So there was a group that said, this is not working, what can we do different? So they started a group called Christian Churches Together, and they said, let's not talk about theology to begin with. Let's just serve the poor or the needy and common things and by working and serving together, we'll understand each other. Just like the church I told you about, someone told me, oh, that's nice, very good. But when we went to them, now we understand them. Like they know who we are, they know what we believe in, and we're not trying to convert them, we just want to serve with them. And over the time, when we start to say, okay, how do you understand, and it happens many times, how do you understand? Do you worship, oh, we don't worship saints. You have the Trinity? Yes, we have the. So in that type of dialogue, when it comes to, like, we start talking about theology, we can understand much better, right? Just like with your friends. If you see some stranger and you have a conversation, okay, you say whatever you want. You might insult each other. I mean, because you might upset each other. No insult. We'll get upset and we get tense, and then we'll leave. They left. But when you with your very close friends, make sure. and it might take a longer time. And that's the new group. Something that we came across, I don't know if you have it in this area. Actually, it's in Cleveland, Annapolis, Minnesota, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, San Diego, and Orange County. So they started. Do you have Focus, a Fellowship of Orthodox Christians United to Serve? It's a newer organization. You have it? We have Orthodox Christian Fellowship. Yes, OCF is a campus organization. This is something where the youth, the Orthodox youth, it started, I think, with the Antiochian, the Greek, and the Russian also came on. So they wanted to do service jointly. And it started small in a group, like a common service led by the Orthodox churches. So I remember it was just a couple of years ago, and they wanted to start something in California. So one of our priests, Abdelsayed and Sayed, they got involved. So they have a regular service with the Orthodox Christians. Even though we're not in full communion, something like this, it breaks down those barriers. Yes?
We have it, but we're not fully involved. I think we have a few members that are involved with it. This is with all the other Orthodox.
Yes.
So we do have it, but our youth are not totally involved in it. Only the colored people.
Carlos is on the website.
All right, here's a picture.
I think it is Focus.
Tamara was telling me Abuna Krolos is on their website. They were going to even hire one of our people, like full-time position, to manage, because there's a lot of administration that needs to be done. The good thing is about it is that it really helps to unite. Like, for example, when I was going to study theology, so there was, in one of the dialogues, they said, we want the students of each churches to study, in different seminaries. Like, that's why they said Coptic student studying a Greek seminary. In the beginning, very tense, like there's Chalcedon and two natures. And honestly, in the beginning, every single conversation has to end in Chalcedon. And it's very tense. But right now, after a couple of years, like very close friends, anytime the subject comes, tell them, oh, you know the Greek church, they know the Coptic church. We're not like, we got over that. We understand. Actually, usually, you want to know, we know the theology a little bit better. Like, they take it very simply. All they know is that we hate, no, wrong, not Orthodox. And they even say, no, they're not Orthodox, they're ancient churches, or call us whatever you want. But when you go deeply into theology, we thought you only have one nature. No. That's explain insight for them. So I was telling one of the youth, now he's a deacon, but he works with a ecumenical patriarch. He told me, I was on the website before and there was an argument, and some of your Coptic students, he's like, they have all the answers and they're citing from the fathers and their answers. Like, I got embarrassed. And he's like, I'm telling you, he's working for the you can't get hired. Now of course he would respond in a different way probably. But there's an appreciation, admiration through the cooperative work. Imagine when we have it with the other churches. We'll start with this, but Catholic Charities are doing amazing things. And a lot of the local churches, there's one church in Chicago, as a group of churches, where they do this, and you're going to have to stop me. What time do you finish? So, tell me now. Okay, that means I'll skip. But one of the churches, what they do is that there's a transient home, the homeless that are, they move from one place to the next. So what they do is they don't have enough shelters in Chicago to take care of them. So in the winter months, they divide churches. They take turns to have them come for one night in the church, and they have a way of doing it. They feed them a meal at night and one in the morning, and they have someone to watch them to make sure nothing happens, and then they leave. So we had a bunch of youth. They said, we want to do this. At the end of the day, what was actually, all wanted to stay up all night. Like, they all want to be they were fighting over who gets to stay up. And but you know what their question was? Almost 80%, 70%. How come our church can't do that? So I'm like, you asked, like, I know the line. I know what the response is going to be, but if I ask different, then I'm not in charge there, just visiting. But of course, the children's Sunday school, it's their safety. There's a lot of, that's why a lot of the churches who do this, they end up to have a separate building. I'll tell you one last story and then we'll go on. There was a guy I met, I was serving in a church just for 1 week. They pray like once a month. I didn't even know there was a church that exists there. So I went to pray, and then afterwards there was a couple that came, obviously not Egyptian. And so I asked them after, what brought you here? How do you know about the church? I said, we came from Mina. She said, okay, who's Mina? They said, it's our son. So I looked at him, I said, I don't know how you could have Mina. Mina's like, he just came from Egypt. His English is like struggling. So I said, you have to explain. They said, we adopted him. I said, what do you mean you adopted? They said he got the papers, and his family couldn't come. They're in a very difficult situation, and his health, it's a hard story. So they had to bring him here. They're taking care of him. He wants to go to church. They brought him to the church. I said, okay, what do you do for a living? He said, I serve the homeless. I said, what do you mean you serve the homeless? He said, yeah, we have a building in our church. They bought a separate building, and we take care of them, and we have medical, we have this. He started to explain. I started to say, okay, what are we doing? And he's by himself, like literally. That's his job. He gets some help to take care of his family, but that's his service. And he's taking care of, and he said, and we're pray for us because we want to bring his sister and his parents. Like I'm saying, we're Coptic. We didn't know who Mina is, what he's doing, and they're taking care without anyone. They said we couldn't have kids. God didn't allow, so he said, let's adopt. And God gave us Mina, and we need more. see when you say we won't know these type of sayings, and we have the Orthodox faith, sometimes what are we doing? Okay, serving the wealthy is a barrier. It's a difficulty. I'm going to skip over most of this. How hard is it for those who trust in riches? So how to preach to the wealthy, and they're not all evil. I know sometimes we try to demonize the wealthy. No, but there's different ways that we can. So, for example, the call for a very wealthy person, who doesn't know Christ and doesn't care, like they're distracted by the riches. Some people in America are like this, some of them, right? Where it's just not concerned. So how do we call them to be content with what they have, whether rich or poor? Like, that was the lesson for some of our youth. When they grow up and they have the iPod, they have the iPhone, they have and you take it away from them that's it. Their life is misery. Like, I always imagine what's going to happen when they get and start working, and they can't find work for a month. What's going to happen? Complete depression for a month? What? The call to discernment in spending, how to be wise in their spending. Like, just because you make $1 million doesn't mean you have to live in a $5 million home or whatever, right? So that type of discernment. So sin is not in wealth, but in its misuse and its abuse. How to have this type of discernment. One of the books we recommend, On Wealth and Poverty by John Chrysostom, the best. Because he said it, we don't have to repeat. The call to faithful giving, tithes to the church, how to give properly. Like, I was in one of the churches and they have fundraising this and fundraising that. And because they want to build a big project, so they started to have a month, they just preach about giving. So I said, okay, I want to mention a story about another church, not Orthodox, where they just had a Sunday where everyone gives their tithe, like for the month. And Abuna would announce, he said, I don't want the whole year. Just do what you're supposed to do and give your month. And all we did was that they got more than any of the festival, any of the fundraising, anything else, like just in that month, because we're being faithful, this is what we're supposed to do. Someone said, okay, we like giving to Egypt. And that's important. Abuna was telling us, Abuna Pshoy, that there's organizations that give millions, and people are very generous because we're committed to serving the poor and the afflicted in Egypt. But also too, when your house has a problem with its electricity or with its plumbing, that doesn't mean that you're not going to neglect it for your own like your own kids, you have to take care of your house. So you can also help others. Like even when you go on the airplane, they say put on your mask first, so you can, and then help the kids. Why? Because if you are losing oxygen, you're not going to be able to help anyone. So this type of understanding, the principle of how to give. And we err always on the side of generosity, not on the side of judgment. Yes? That means that when we're coming to give, like someone says, there's a big project, I'm going to go donate to the project. Or the church needs chairs, okay, I'm going to buy the chairs. And sometimes which is good, I'm not saying it's wrong, like when there's a need, we give. But I noticed this, I was only a treasurer for a few months. I was like the worst treasurer when I was young, because there was no money. It was always like, it started the church and we were in debt from the beginning. So, but I noticed the people, like, we didn't have chairs at once. We were borrowing from one of the other churches. And then after a while they said, okay, we can't give you any more. We need it for our kids. So I was very upset. We don't have chairs. So one of the other people went to someone who can contribute, and they said, we need chairs. Can you get us chairs? They said, okay. So he went and bought the chairs. But then I was thinking after, and Abuna got very upset that this happened. Abuna Tadr. So he said, why? He said, no, we could ask people to donate, but what if he gets the chair that he wants? Or what if someone breaks a chair? What's he going to come? You broke the chair. Don't you know how? Do you know what I mean? Like this type of personality. So we donate, we give because God asked us to give because of our heart with Him, not necessarily because there is a need. Yes, we announce the church, we have this project, we have this, but the church is not poor. Like, I should correct. Like, Christ is the one who gives riches, but sometimes we act as if He's in need, right? One time Abdelsayed said, it's the best for the church to be poor, like we don't, and the people in the church to be wealthy, right? But we're not saving up necessarily. We're always giving. As a church, as an institution, we're always giving and spending in that sense. And when there's a need, usually because of the service, like there's really, God supplies and much more. So I remember once we came, no more stories after. Call to faithful giving. we should have special offerings for the poor just as a reminder, like especially during the fast. Do you know why we fast? One of the lessons that they would give when during the fasting, especially the Great Lent, they would say, okay, we're not going to spend money on meat, especially in the early days. It was very expensive. So we save the money from the meat and we'll use it to give to the poor. Or we'll take the meat that we were going to eat and give it to the poor, and we eat the food and it can last. Sometimes now you go to buy something Xiaomi, it's 10 times more expensive than if you buy the ground beef is one of the cheapest things now. But the idea is, no, I'm not. I was just about to say that. But the idea is that when we're fasting because Christ came to fast so as to give us. So it's fasting so that we take from what we were going to live on to give to someone else. So we're still fasting. We're always going to. We're not going to change. In fact, if we change, we'll add. We'll add more. And then the sacrifice that you get spending for the tofu or spending for the soy milk or whatever, the 40 cents, 60 cents, God sees. Don't worry, He'll give for you. Okay. So this type of evangelism, you don't need all these statistics, right? This is just to see. You look at, this was during the elections. So you can look and you see that, what did I want to say from this? That the more wealthy they got, the more they ended up giving. This is the principle that we don't find necessarily in America. Yes, there's some good things in the politicians, and sometimes they do this because it's reported. I realize there's a lot of other things, but the concept, the principle, when someone's very wealthy, said, no, you should be giving more, not less. One time I was telling Abuna, yes, that's why I did it. I did it during the elections.
That's why their percentages went up.
Here. Yes.
He wanted to get elected, so he's like, hey, I'm giving to the poor.
Yes. But at the very least, the principle, there's another principle behind it that we should so the more we have, the more that we give. I'll tell you, this will be the last story. So one of the priests told me this, who's an accountant. And he said one time a man came to him and he said, Abuna, I have a problem. He said, what's the problem? He said, I realized I wasn't giving my 10%, so I decided to give my 10%. And then I got a promotion. So he said, okay, what happened? So he said, afterwards I gave 15%. And then I got a raise. So then I gave 20%. And this kept happening. He said, Abuna, now I give 80%. And I have more than what I start, much more than what I started. Wow. So when I said, keep, this is good. And he went to tell all the priests, he went to say all the priests, that this is the work of God, because we can't beat God in giving. He wanted to teach him and to teach us to give. But some say, oh, we're in need, we need to save a little more, maybe next month, right? Maybe next year. And we have permission, like the church sometimes will say, no, you, in your position, you can't give. Like we give, the church will give you after a while. But with the widow with the 2 mites, what did she do? She, the church was supposed to take care of her, or at the time, that's in the deacons, but she gave. That's why Christ remembered her. Okay, evangelism to the rich. So they see here too, the working class usually end up giving much more than the wealthy. And this is a very important, sometimes even the very wealthy, it's hard for them to trust anyone to give. Or maybe they say, I don't like the way you're running the church and some of the business, right? And sometimes they have a lot, like, they're not wrong. Sometimes we make very poor decisions. That's why those people, we say, okay, Archon in the board, like you have the wisdom in dealing with financial issues. So instead of staying at home and saying, no, I'm not going to give, let us help you to give, to follow the commandment, not because we need your money or we need your name on the board. We don't need. How to have the call for faithful service. In some of the Sunday school classes, they adopt the family. The regular service projects, as we said. How the board member, how they can have a role in the service of the church. And some of the best servants were those, they forget, the high position, and they come down and serve with Like we don't give special treatment because they're Mr. So-and-so or Dr. So-and-so. Come serve with us. It's okay. We're not going to ask anything from you. I know in one of the churches they have very wealthy, like one multi-millionaire. And Abuna kept telling him, we don't need anything from you. Just come to the church, serve as a deacon, just normal. We don't need anything. Don't write us any checks. And this is the type, like in general, what we do. Like to make people comfortable. We're not after your money, we're after your salvation. That's our job. Like to save souls. Who cares? Like even if we have no budget, God will take care of us in his way. Okay, and how we help them, like do we have missions to the rich? I was doing one time we were in Hawaii, so responsible for a very large community. And so I said, well, yes, we're serving the poor, but we're not serving the rest. Like middle class, they might come, but what about the higher people? So I was telling one of the priests, we want to have something for all of the, he said, no, let me serve the poor. I said, okay, I agree, but still, what are we doing for everyone else? Like the local community or anyone else. Like I said, could we have a charity banquet where all of the income is going for something else? Like, not us, we're not going to get any money, but how to teach them how to give. And in the charity banquet, the goal is not for the money, but how to preach to them. Like, or even a banquet, but at the end we say, okay, we don't want your money, we just want you to give to any organization, here's the list. Like, we are after for you, and this is your home. I mean, things like that, I don't think we're thinking of. There's a program, once we were in this Hawaii group, and there was a group of, they looked like businessmen, and they were sitting at one of the tables. So one of the youth said, come, Abuna, you have to talk to these people. So I looked and said, where are you from? Are you from here? They're like, no, they were from the East Coast or somewhere. I said, what are you doing here? Oh, we're on a homeless project. I said, what is that? We're living as homeless for 3 days. Our organization arranged it, and they tell us what the program is, and we're living with I said, what's the purpose? So that when they go back, they know how to serve in their company. The experience, they said, this is the best thing we did. And so they bring other people. And now there are programs like this for the wealthy to teach them. And glory be to God forever, amen. We won't go to the economics. It's more for the priests, actually. Later on we will. Okay. Now how do we make up the time?